Hey y'all, thank you for tuning in to another session of Better Out Than In, Real Talk with Kai. So this week, I'll be having my mom on the phone, answering some questions and giving a little advice about type 1 diabetes and parents with kids who have diabetes or teenagers, and just how to kind of understand what they may be going through or how to be a little more helpful. um, my mom's in Southern Cal, so she's not here, but here's my mama. Y'all say hi to Diane. Mama, say hi to the people.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
All right, so Mama, thank you for coming on and just answering some questions for me. Appreciate it. So my first question is, what were your initial thoughts when they diagnosed me with type 1 diabetes?
Well, initially, I believe it was the day before I had took Guy to the doctor, and she was diagnosed with the flu. She was given a shot, and we were sent home saying that it would pass within a couple of days. That night, I went in. I worked graveyard shift, so I went in, and close to the ending of my shift, one of our brothers had called and said that she was looking really bad and had threw up some coffee grounds. Uh, and so I immediately rushed home. And when I rushed home, the best description I can say was that she looked like death warmed over. Her eyes were sunken in her head, and she was not as responsive, or very literally not responsive. Rushed her into the car, took her straight to the emergency. Upon getting to the emergency, I ran in, and they came out with a gurney, and they rushed her on a gurney and took her straight into the emergency back. At that point, they were trying to find out what was going on with her, and they tested her glucose levels, which did not register on their hospital glucose monitor. They couldn't get any uh, sign of anything. It was basically off of their hospital scale, which meant it was over the 900s. They finally were able then to get a reading on the glucose levels. Once they did that, they then automatically diagnosed that she had basically had diabetes. Initially, I was blown. I was like, what? That was the first reaction. Mind you, I was extremely concerned about her her pulling through this. Secondly, I became extremely angry due to the fact that she was misdiagnosed. They didn't have any beds, pediatric beds in the ICU at the hospital, so they immediately transferred her to Children's Hospital. Upon transferring her to Children's Hospital, she basically was in a state of comatose state. And there she was in a coma for several days. They finally were able to, get her stable. And at that point, then she was definitely diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. In retrospect, I then was able to kind of look back and see some things that led there, led to that point. I was extremely glad and that they were able to stabilize her. My rage, basically, about the situation on the misdiagnosis subsided as long as she was becoming okay. But then at that point, it was like there had been no family history on either side of the family with people who had been who had been diagnosed with diabetes. So it's like, where did this come
Right. And, once it was said that I had type 1 diabetes and I got all the training and they sent me home, what were your feelings or how did you feel about going back to work full time and leaving me to uh, be able to take care of my diabetes on my own?
Well, I was extremely concerned. At that point, I was having to manage my mom, Kai's grandma, because she was bedridden. And I had fully depended on Kai to um, help manage herself with the diabetes, because up until that point, even though she was 11, she was much more mature than a typical 11-year-old. So my trust level in her and my relationship with her, I was confident that she would take care of the maintenance part upon asking and checking in continuously with her to see if she had checked her glucose, um, taking her shots, eating appropriately um, for that 8-hour period that I was at work. I just really depended on her to do that. The problem, though, was also at that same time she was diagnosed with a thyroid issue. And along with the diabetes and the thyroid issue, it became extremely difficult to deal with her or to talk with her about what was going on in that 8-hour period. There was a lot of resistance. In retrospect, there was a lot of anger. It felt like a tug of war. I, at the same time, was really conscious and trying to be extremely understanding, but then, too, I would become a little frustrated because I knew that I had to exhibit more patience and more understanding into what was going on mentally and emotionally with her. I just wanted my daughter to live.
And so, is there any advice or suggestions or anything like that that you would give to someone who may have, a child or a teenager with diabetes, or is there any advice that you would give to someone who just may have a relationship with a person who has diabetes to better understand or better help that person with diabetes?
Well, I think it's very important to become well versed into the effects of diabetes, uh, the the effects and the effects that it has on that person emotionally. I will say though that science has advanced, and so for parents who are going through this type of situation, whether it be diabetes or any other chronic situation with your child, to understand and explore all facts and all avenues of what is going on, what is happening. Seek advice and get your get advice from the professionals. Look into other situations in which can make it much easier for your child to manage and to understand themselves how important it is to take care of themselves. The the effects that it will have on their life as they mature, as they grow. Um, Again, with science and the measures that are being used now, there are things that will make it much more streamlined. Uh, where as a parent, you don't have to so much worry about the child taking the shots, so to speak. So eventually, as the medicines progressed, there are things like insulin pumps. There are other type of procedures for checking the monitoring that now they have, where even if you're at work, you can check and see what your child's readings are. Um, I believe it's hard as a parent because again, you want your child in the best situation. On the wish list, I wish that I could have quit my job. I wish that I could have been more proactive. But what I discovered during that time that Kai was diagnosed was there were other situations, like as far as school. So when I became active in just dealing with the public schools on my daughter's situation, that opened up another area where it began to be an onset of children that were diagnosed with diabetes. So your child knowing that they're not alone in the situation, knowing that there are others that are also dealing with that. It's good to have your child in some type of program which they can be amongst their peers, among other children that are facing the realities of a chronic disease or disorder. Therefore, they know that they're not the only one. And I think it's very important as well for parents to have support in that area, to know that they're not the only ones.
Right. Well, again, Mama, thank you for coming on and sharing and giving some advice or some suggestions to people I know my mom kind of mentioned about there being other kids being diagnosed around the same time and having to deal with, kind of the public schooling and kind of educating them as well about my disease and how to help and just the overall mental state that I was going through and my attitude and just my behavior. So next week, what I'll be touching on is how my mom was able to get me an aide to be with me at school and kind of how that helped out with my attitude and with me just being able to maneuver in a public school and being able to adjust to doing things on my own when I had to go fully back to school. So I appreciate you guys watching and listening. Please continue to support, like, subscribe, follow. God bless. Bye, Mom.